Okay. Good evening and welcome to the December 16th, 2013 Hillsborough Township Board of Education meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. In accordance with the State Sunshine Law of New Jersey, adequate notice of this meeting of the Hillsborough Township Board of Education was provided on December 12th, 2013 to the Hillsborough Beacon and Courier News. May I have a roll call, please, Mr. Mahmood?
Surely. Ms. Bogoshevsky?
Here.
Ms. Santafonte?
Here.
Mr. Gillette?
Here.
Mrs. Haas?
Here.
Mrs. Haley?
Here.
Mrs. Lay? Mr. Pulsifer?
Here.
Ms. Wasson?
Here.
And Mr. Kinst?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay. If you could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have correspondence as is listed in the agenda, and now I'd like to hand it off to Dr. Schiff for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Kintz. It's my pleasure this evening to share, as part of the superintendent's report, the reporting out of how well our students did on the 2013 state assessments. And to do that this evening, Dr. Antunes has prepared a presentation for you. So at this time, I turn it over to Dr. Antunes.
Thank you. Okay. So please allow me to provide you a perspective on exactly where Hillsborough stands when looking at it from the 30,000-foot view. NAEP, the National Assessment of Educational Progress, produces the nation's report card. They do this to inform the public about the academic achievement of elementary and secondary school students across the United States. NAEP collects and reports academic achievement at the national level. As you can see, New Jersey falls second in the country in fourth grade reading, comes in first at the 8th grade level in reading, fourth in fourth grade math, and second in 8th grade math. You see the change there is the state dropped one from 2011 to 2013. Our students actually participate in NAEP when they are, when we as a district are asked to participate in the pilot. You're not really asked, you have to sort of do it when they send you the letter, but all of our students participate and they take care of it. Factions of students, not every student in every school in every grade level. In Hillsborough, we rank in the top 20% in a state that ranks in the top 10% of the country. So looking at it from that perspective, New Jersey has high expectations, NAEP has high expectations, and then when we look at ourselves in relation to the state and the country, let's see how well we do. And we rank in the top 20%. This chart indicates that our literacy results have not really changed that much over the past 3 years. This is an area which we will continue to focus our time and drawing greater awareness to everyone, students, staff, teachers. SGOs have been written in all grade levels for teachers who teach language arts literacy in order to focus on student growth, and we are anticipating improved performance as we continue our journey. In mathematics, well, we're certainly moving in the right direction relative to other districts in mathematics. We are seeing a consistently upward trend and have achieved the highest score ever in over a 10-year period. So we take it from 2004 to 2013, and as you can see in mathematics, we have achieved the highest level over this 10-year period. Science, not surprisingly, is tracking similarly to mathematics. In 2013, we scored at the 83rd percentile, matching the highest percentile over a 10-year period. I apologize, I didn't mean to change that. In language arts literacy, okay, I know these charts are difficult to see. They will be on the website for you to look at, and I know they are difficult to see. The next several charts compare Hillsborough Township Public Schools to other districts in the state with a district, district factor group, or DFG, of I. Now, district DFGs, or district factor groups, represent an approximate measure of a community's relative socioeconomic status, or SES. The classification system provides a useful tool for examining student achievement and comparing similarly situated school districts in other analyses. DFGs are assigned from A through J. A represents districts with the lowest socioeconomic status, districts with a high level of poverty, and J with districts with the highest socioeconomic status or the least amount of poverty within their districts, within their communities. Hillsborough is an I. This chart shows how we are doing in comparison to one of the highest DFGs in the state in language arts literacy. So the highest is J, we are an I, okay? When we look at a pattern of achievement over time, we see inconsistent performance. These large swings indicate that we seem to have inconsistent expectations for performance. As a result, we will continue to work hard at developing common assessments and do our best to ensure that the new curriculum implementation in language arts literacy, as well as all curriculum, is delivered consistently across the district. As touched upon moments ago, in language arts literacy over a 10-year period, we do see mostly inconsistent performance. However, ideally, what we'd like to see are trends toward upward performance, sort of steadily increasing upward performance like we do here. This happens to be 8th grade. This is another example of the lack of predictability of our performance profile. This is mathematics. We see typically inconsistent performance in mathematics over this 10-year period as well. This has generated a lot of discussion over the years, and if we have greater consistency of expectations, then we ought to have greater consistency of academic achievement. So again, instead of having this spikiness going on, we'd rather see more consistent performance throughout with our students. In science, remember that science is tested only in grades 4 through 8 at this time. So we are seeing trending upwards, which is what we want to see, except we want to see it more consistently. We don't want to see, again, this spikiness. We want to see it with more consistency trending upwards. Some very interesting information on AP courses. Excuse me. In 2012-2013, last school year, we offered 24 AP courses. Total enrollment of those courses was 906 students, down from 979 the year before. The percentage of students enrolled in AP courses taking the exam is 71%, also down from the year before of 77%. Yet our percentage of students scoring a 3 or higher went up to 91%, 1 percentage point from the previous year, but the highest it's ever been. Now, what's interesting about this is that in 2010-2011, Italian was eliminated from college boards. So they just stopped giving an AP exam. That's the year we added AP psychology. So that's why we remained static. Our number of AP courses remained static. In 2011 and 12, Italian was reinstated by college boards, and we added AP microeconomics, AP macroeconomics, and AP world history. In 2012-13, we added AP Environmental to our list of offerings, and next school year, which we're beginning to prepare for now, in 14-15, College Boards is revising the AP Physics B course, which is 1 course, and is adjusting it to 2 full-year AP courses, Physics 1 AP and Physics 2 AP. They are keeping AP Physics C. So they're essentially taking one away but adding one, so they'll be up 1 physics course. So we remained static regarding the number of AP courses we offer our students, yet we realized a dip in our total enrollment of students taking AP classes. So while overall our percentage of students taking AP classes has dipped, we have the highest percentage of students scoring a 3 or higher than we have had since 2000, at least since 2005-2006. Our students taking the exam performed exceptionally well, and we have increased total enrollment over a period of time. While not all students taking the course are not taking the exam, there are real, valid, and reliable reasons for that happening. Those who choose to take the exam are doing pretty well, though. If we take a look at our average SAT scores, well, overall, our SAT scores pretty much always exceed the state and national mean in each area. In 2013, our students performed third highest since 2006 in the critical reading mean, the second highest in mathematics, and the second highest in writing. Less students may be taking the SAT for a variety of reasons, including but not limited to the fact that many colleges and universities are now have a preference for the ACT, as well as the fact that we're seeing more students enter the armed services, and students choosing to attend a community college for the first 2 years prior to going to a four-year institution are not taking, they're not required to take the SATs, so they don't take them. We believe that's the reason for the drop in the percentage of students taking the SAT. So what have we done and what will we continue to do? I won't read every single one of these. I want to focus on a couple of them, though. The alignment of the curriculum to the Common Core and the New Jersey Core Curriculum Content Standards continues. That continues because the Common Core has been approved, the New Jersey Core Curriculum has been approved, but all of our curriculum is completely aligned, but what we're adapting are the pacing, the tracking, the assessments, the common assessments that the teachers are working on. We adapt those things to fit our needs within the district. The one-to-one technology initiative continues. The continuance of our development and design of common assessments. Again, the teachers give the common assessments, then they provide feedback. They take notes, they provide feedback to the supervisors, the content area supervisors, who then look at all that, take that into consideration, and with the teachers adjust accordingly. We, of course, raise teacher expectations and student expectations, and one of the things that truly we are committed to is professional development for teachers, for administrators, which is really something that Hillsborough Township ought to be proud of. We have redesigned ASI at the K-4 levels, giving the principals more flexibility for our most at-risk students. And we introduced the double period of Algebra 1 at the high school for at-risk mathematics students this past school year, and it's this current school year, and it's going very well, as well as the lunchtime mathematics intervention period. SGOs, student growth objectives, are a part of the new teacher evaluation model, which of course adds to things that we're doing and will continue to do. It allows the teacher and the principal to focus on what it is, what kind of growth they want to see in their students. So what are some of the takeaways as a result of this data that Dr. Schiff and I have been looking at? Well, in language arts literacy, the results have remained static over the last 3 years. Inconsistencies seem to occur from year to year. That is, same grade level, but different students. And we have relatively consistent performance with a smaller range. So the difference in the range of scores from one year to the next is smaller, as opposed to in math, where we might see going from I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but from a 64 to an 85. The range in literacy is maybe from a 78 to a 77. So the difference in the range is much smaller. In science, we see the increased performance and higher relative achievement for both state and DFG level data, as well as for mathematics. Additionally, in mathematics, the inconsistencies continue to occur, and as I said, there's that greater range of performance there. So we have some overall internal inconsistencies. There are no clear predictable patterns of performance, which I know that you've heard Dr. Schiff talk about since he began with us. So in literacy, we're focusing on boosting early performance. And in mathematics and science, performance relative to DFG and state is some of the highest we've seen in a decade. So in summary, to take you back to where we started, Hillsborough Township Public Schools performs in the top 20% in a state that performs in the top 10% in the country. So that's not so bad. Thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Antunes. Now we'd like to open it up for questions from the board.
Not all at once. Mr. Pulsifer.
I just have one question. I was looking at the numbers for the AP test. Is it incorrect or unrealistic to interpret that as the students who are not taking it are the ones who are probably a little bit of a stretch to be taking it anyway, since we're seeing the number of kids performing very well is going up, at the same time we're dropping the number of students in the classes?
That may be one variable. We don't think that's what it is. One of the reasons we think we're seeing less students take the test is because many colleges and universities no longer accept the credits from AP exams. Additionally, we have concurrent enrollment, so a student doesn't necessarily have to take the AP statistics exam since they're getting college credits already for taking the exam, for taking the class and passing the class. So why take the exam if they don't have to?
Maybe if we could just point out, could you flip to that, the AP chart real quick?
Yes, I'm sorry. I took
That's
myself
okay.
off. I'll put myself back on.
Let's just get back to the AP chart. Mr. Pulsifer, you said that we have less children that are taking the examination. Actually, if you look at over the 8-year period that we have shown, I believe we have the second or third highest amount of children that have taken the test in 8 years. So you can see here that 906 students have taken it, all the way from a low of close to 700 kids. So the percentage of children that are actually taking more rigorous coursework in our district has increased significantly over the past 8 years. We've also increased more offerings as well as that. Now, to Dr. Antunes' point, there are actually disincentives now for kids to take the AP test. So if a child's in a concurrent enrollment class, we have AP statistics that has that you can receive transcripted credit from RVCC. Why would you take an AP test? Because now you have a transcript that says you have college-level coursework. So there are other colleges and universities, in particular Ivy Leagues, that do not recognize the AP course and will have you take a Harvard, MIT, Princeton calculus class. There are, I think there's a variety of reasons why that. So we watch that statistic carefully about the amount of students who actually take the course versus the ones that take the AP exam with a careful eye, because there may be reasons why they didn't take it versus they just don't feel that they would perform well on that assessment.
No, I was just looking, the reason I was asking is because, and I haven't done all the math without a calculator here, but the number of kids taking the classes, while it's increasing, we're also increasing the number of courses we have, and it looks like the increase in students seems to parallel pretty nicely with the increase in classes, but then we had a drop in this last year. That's
We
why
did, right.
That's why I was asking about, what that shift, because you're right, the numbers go up, but as you watch the numbers, so the percent change in the number of courses we have compared to the percent change in the total kids enrolled, it seems to track pretty consistently until this year. That's what I was wondering.
And how did class size change with those 2 years? Has there been a slight reduction in class size?
I don't know the answer to that.
I think last year, well, see, these could be sophomores, juniors, and seniors who take these classes, so it's hard to say. But the senior class last year was just under 600 for the first time in eight years or so. So, but this is a compilation of everybody, so.
We do have some courses that are very popular. The AP psychology also very popular.
AP Psychology is one of the most popular courses. A bunch of AP US History, a lot of them. That history department, that social studies department is really popular.
Yes. And we're smiling because Lynn Durwood is in the audience, who is the teacher of AP Psychology and does a wonderful job.
Dr. Sasan.
I just wanted to make a comment. Another reason why I've heard some kids are not taking the AP exam is that if they are going to be enrolling in a very competitive major, they need a certain GPA to get into that major. And if you opt out of some courses like calculus and things like that, those A's that you got here don't count towards that major, and you could actually be making a big mistake by not taking those courses for credit in college, getting your that 4.0 to factor into your major to be able to compete for those very select majors that are out there. So I've heard a lot of seniors who have graduated have been stung by this and not made it into majors easily because of it, and are discouraging some of the high school students against taking those AP courses that are going to be within their major. So they might be taking AP English if they're interested in a science major and take the exam, but not take the science exams. So.
Mrs. Haas?
I would just like to say that whether or not kids take the AP exam, I think everybody should be encouraged to take AP classes because the level of rigor is wonderful, and it is a clear indicator of whether or not you're going to be able to survive college coursework. In that regard, I also think some of our new and very popular, in addition to psychology, the macro and microeconomics have been very popular, but those are all elective classes. And I will go back to what I always say, kids don't have enough space in their schedules to take a lot of electives. If you want to take your 4 years of math and your 4 years of English and 4 years of language and social studies and science, there's not very much time left to take other classes. And we don't excuse kids from like honors bio if you're taking AP bio. Usually kids will wind up taking both. And we should really be looking at whether or not there are some ways that we could free up some space in kids' schedule by maybe, creating a new review process or something for prerequisites on some of the AP classes. And to give as many kids as possible that college experience. So, my 2 cents.
Well, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Antunes. Thank you.
That's all I have.
That's all I have. Okay. Before we go into new business and public comment, just kind of the president's moment. This is our last meeting of the year, of the calendar year, and of the term since we changed the elections from April to November. And our next meeting on January 6th will be our board reorganization for our new and re-elected board members. One of our board members is completing her term and chose not to run for re-election in this past election cycle. So on behalf of the Hillsborough Board of Education, I'd like to take this moment to recognize and thank Thuy-Ann Lay for her service as a board member since April 2010, and present her with this plaque. I'll do it after I have a couple words to memorialize it. Thuy-Ann has served as chair of the Education Committee and also served on the Facilities, Communications, Special Project Committees, among others, and as legislative representative. Among her colleagues here on the board, including myself, we'd like to share a couple things about Thuy-Ann. She's been an advocate for student excellence all throughout her term here, and in particular to instill and nurture a love of learning and a passion for learning among the students of all ages. She's always been a strong supporter of extracurriculars activities and groups. You may have seen her wearing marching band robo-raiders at various board meetings. She's helped new board members orient to their new roles and provided mentorship for new members. She's passionate, as people are probably well aware, she's passionate about environmental issues and how the district can provide a healthy environment and do so in a sustainable way. And like many members of this board, she can advocate for her values and is willing to listen to other sides to come to a better solution. So Thuy-Ann, thanks again for your years of service and contributions in assuring that Hillsborough continues to have an excellent school district, and we wish you success in your future endeavors.
No cake? No fruit?
What's that?
Well, at first I said no cake, but I was told that it should be healthy, so I was asking if there might be fruit.
This is the last meeting. We're all, I think, itching to finish the year on a good note. So now I'd like to open up the floor to public comment. This would be for new business or for the action agenda.
Dana Blevins, President of the Hillsborough Education Association. With your permission, Mr. Kinst, I'd just like to take the opportunity to also, on behalf of the Hillsborough Education Association, thank Tuyan Lee for her years of service here on the board. And she has served this community and this district very well. And the community and the district is definitely a better place after having her on the board. And we wish her well in her future endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blevins. Come on up, Robo Raiders.
Hello, my name is Alina, and this is Pat and Josh. We are the Team 75 representatives, and the last time when we spoke here, we discussed the 7th annual Borough Blast, and we held that on November 23rd, so these guys are going to talk more about that.
Okay, so at this event, our Team 75 hosted 24 FLL teams from around the state to participate in the state qualifying tournament for the first FLL Challenge, Nature's Fury. This challenge was meant to show those middle school students who competed how to prepare for natural disasters. From Hillsborough, one of our teams won the Teamwork Award while one of their mentors, Evan Galovich from our Team 75, won the award for Outstanding Young Mentor with Borough Pride. The day ended with lots of fun and anticipation, with 7 teams qualifying to go on to the state tournament at Mount Olive.
Also, now we would like to mention that upcoming on January 4th will be the annual first kickoff. It will take place at our warehouse on 216 Route 206 in Valley Park, number 7, lot number 7 if you would like to come, starting at 8:30 a.m. and over at 4 p.m. This is the event where First unveils their new game and competition for the upcoming year. It's one of the most important games and it's one of the most important days for our First robotics team in the year, and probably and definitely the most exciting. So please visit roboraiders.com in the upcoming week for more information about the event.
Yeah, thanks for your time, and have a great night.
Thank you. For those of you who are able to make it to the kickoff this coming in a couple of weeks on January 4th, it really is. It's a lot of excitement. I know Tuyan and I have attended for the past couple of years, and with my kids in tow, and it's a lot of fun, a lot of excitement. That's where they unveil it, and once they unveil it, then everyone gets to work, and the energy level goes up even yet another notch. So, looking forward to another year on that. Any other public comment? Okay. Any new business from the board? Okay. Tuyan, Mrs. Lay.
I can't help this. But yeah, I would like to thank the people who voted me in to be a volunteer on the Board of Ed, and also my fellow board members, because having this experience, I know the value of having diversity of thought and values. I think that gives a lot to our school district. And I know that some of the decisions are hard, and and I can see it in the way we discuss in public. It's hard to do that as well. So I appreciate the independent thought that we have seen on this board, and I wish all of you and the school district well in the future years. And one thing that of course, I was thinking or reflecting about the last 3 years, and the values that brought me here are the same ones that I value now. And I would like to take some time to talk about, even as we improve and we strengthen our school district, there are certain core values that we need to remind ourselves of. And for example, I think that at the end of the day, the teachers are really influencing our students, and the respect that we can give them, sincere respect for what they do for our students, is really important. It's something that, when we say, no matter what else is provided, just the basic motivation that students get from their teachers and their patience with them as they master new skills, it's something that we need to value as a district, and something that will carry a lot of weight despite all the major changes that we've seen over the years, especially the last 3 years. I know it's been very exciting on the board, never a dull moment. So I think it is the hardest volunteer position that I've ever done, but I think it's very meaningful, and I encourage other people in the town to do this, because you have a deeper appreciation for what the school district does for your students, for your children, and also more involved community members does make for a better town.
Thank you, Mrs. Lay. Any other new business? Okay. We're going to go to committee reports. Who would like to start? Mr. Pulsifer?
I'll go first. We had a little bit of a problem with quorum the other night, so we did not have an official HR committee meeting, but we did. I did stay in talk with the administration about a couple issues on our plate, and we tabled most everything else for our next meeting. First of all, a quick update on the strong teacher evaluation. We have completed 840 observations, which I believe is roughly a third of the way there. So there's been a lot of work done, and there's a long way to go. But the administration is seeing a lot of progress in the evaluation and that the new system we're using. So I think it's a very good start, and we'll just keep the ball rolling on that. We also discussed there's a class at the high school called Medical Techniques Lab, which up to this point in time didn't actually have a lab. We felt that it was important that there be a lab as part of that class, and so the teacher who was teaching that class will now be teaching a lab to go along with that class. This teacher had 2 duty periods coming in. Prior to this decision to make the change, this teacher had 2 duty periods, so that will be reduced to 1 so they can cover the additional course and lab time to make the Medical Techniques Lab class actually have a lab. And lastly, we discussed the interview process for replacing our Director of Special Services. The administration has interviewed a number of candidates. However, at this point in time, they've not found any suitable candidates. Part of that, we believe, is because of the time of year that not a lot of people looking for a job right now, looking to switch jobs, certainly at this time. So what we discussed, the possibility of appointing one of our current supervisors to an acting director for the rest of this year and looking to backfill. For those who may remember from last week's agenda, both Lenore Johnston and Christine Petrozelli are both retiring as of February 1st. So we need to have staff in place in the leadership of that area. Normally there are 3 people. As of February 1st, there will be 1. So we need to move forward quickly on getting somebody in. And the administration is expecting to pick up the interviewing process again more into the spring when people will be looking for a job change for next year, where we'll get a better candidate pool. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pulsifer. Education Committee? Okay, Operations Committee.
Thank you. Operations Committee met December 11th. We had not too many items on the agenda, but we had some good discussion about the ones we did have. First of all, we reviewed again the revisions to the gifts, grants, and donations policy which I think, is it on tonight? I'm not sure. I think it is on tonight, that's right. And we just had one small minor change to that. You can see that. It's a pretty straightforward policy. We spent a lot of time talking about a new proposed transportation policy. We had Mrs. Espinoza with us, so we spent a lot of time talking about, well, you can read the minutes, but we spent a lot of time talking about cul-de-sacs, what buses are able to travel down and turn around in a cul-de-sac, what buses are currently doing it that probably shouldn't, how far students that live at the end of a cul-de-sac, how far they can walk to get to a crossroads where it is safe for a bus to travel down, how far they can walk if there is no sidewalk, if there is a sidewalk. So a lot of different issues. This is going to be a policy that we're going to continue to talk about. And I think what we do is each month at the Operations Committee meeting, we'll explore ideas, and we'll have Mrs. Espinoza will go back and try to find out how those ideas fit in with with how transportation actually works. Because when you're sitting around a table, sometimes you don't feel it the way she does when she's sitting down and looking at the maps by herself. So she's going to come back to us each time with recommendations, and we're going to look at it. And hopefully, if everything goes well, we'll have a policy in place before the start of the next school year. Also, we had an update on projects that are still being completed or have already been completed by SSP, our former architect of record. They are still working on a couple of projects, including, but not limited to, the Amsterdam School repaving project. As you recall, that project, we had to change it in scope when we ran into some roadblocks from the Delaware and Raritan Canal Commission, but we still plan to go forward with more of the project. And as we do that, SSP is going to continue with that for us. There was a minor snafu with the Woodfern paving and drainage. Not really a snafu, because the drainage project at Woodfern School, it's actually, part of it is actually a pipe that's buried in the ground. So they buried the pipe not exactly to the specifications, the depth specifications as was specified by the architect and engineer, but it will not affect current functionality. It maybe would affect functionality if we decide to add a new wing or something onto the school, or another large parking lot or something like that. But there are workarounds for that. So it's completely functional the way it is, even though it's not to the exact specification. So instead of having the contractor dig the whole thing up, we're going to get a credit from the contractor in lieu of having them do the whole thing again. It's going to work out just fine. We are very excited to announce that we were approved for all of the ROD grants. This is the program where the state is going to pay for 40% of our construction costs. The state, and I don't have the number in front of me now, I had it written down, but I can't find it. But the state made available many millions of dollars across the state. And most of those dollars went for what are called level one projects. Level one projects are things like roofing. So all of our projects were roofing, and they were all approved. I'm going to look at Mr. Mahmood for this. I think the state's contribution was about $1.3 million. Their 40%, and ours is something like 1.6 million. Our 60% contribution, somewhere in that neighborhood, if I recall correctly. The entire amount of the projects were about $3 million. So we're very excited about that. And the architect, Mr. Samja, is going to develop a schedule for how to do that. We're going to replace the fire alarm system at the high school. The fire alarm system is fully functioning. It's just a little long in the tooth, and we're going to get a new one. It's going to be about $36,000. And also, finally, well, two more things. Mr. Mahmood reported that the pickup truck that we talked about a couple of meetings ago is here. I think by now it has the plow ready to go in case we have any snow tomorrow. It's ready to plow.
Yes, it is.
So that's good. Also, Mrs. Lay left me a message today that she had a question about air quality, which I did get very late in the day before I came over here, about air quality at our schools. It's a question that she brought up before, and I thought I had spoken to it, and if I haven't, I apologize. We did speak about that, not this meeting, but I had a conversation with Dr. Schiff and I think Mr. Kinst about this topic. And as we go further into the ESIP process, we are going to be looking at cooling and heating systems, and Operations Committee at least has made a commitment to investigate air quality as part of that process and of air handling of all the projects that we're going to do going forward. So we didn't specifically discuss it this time, but we do have it on our radar, and going forward, we're going to do that. I think that's all we have. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Gillette. Mrs. Lay with the Education Committee.
Yes. So the bulk of our meeting was to go over the state assessments, and Dr. Antuna has already presented that. Then we also have on our agenda tonight to approve the curriculum for 4 classes, all in the music area. So that's item A2 for tonight's action items. And then we also, while I was there, we talked about the policy for the defibrillators. So we're recommending that the full board approve that. And Dr. Schiff talked to us about the interest across the country, actually, on the what we're doing with the one-to-one technology initiative. So to make it efficient, our school district will be hosting an informational session, and that'll be upcoming in February 13th. And we have had already requests from 26 other districts, approximately 80 people from all those districts. And what's interesting is just about a year ago, I remember when Mr. Handler talked about visiting other schools. And then now we're the schools, we are the school that they want to visit. So that's a very, very interesting turn of events. And then we also, I think after I left, we talked about the Robo Raiders varsity letter. And so the current policy in the district is that we issue varsity letters to NJSIAA sports teams. So this doesn't go under that. Outside of the committee, I did talk to the marching band parents, and there is, some precedence there, so I recommend the Robo Raiders to look into it that way. And then upcoming items for the Education Committee meeting are data on the use of concussions that athletes have had over the past year. And the athletic director and trainers will be coming to a future Education Committee meeting. And another future, I think the next committee meeting, they'll be looking at the draft calendars for the upcoming year. That's it.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Lay. Any questions or discussion?
Just one other thing, just following up on Ms. Lay's report. The next Education Committee meeting will be held at the middle school. It's actually on February 13th, and we invite not only the Education Committee to participate in the day's activities, touring the schools, seeing how the one-to-one initiative is working, but we also invite the full board to come if you have the time, to drop by and listen to the panel discussions. We will have students as well as teachers and administrators participating in panels, as well as having tours around the school, in classrooms, seeing the type of work that we've been doing. And if you are interested in coming, please RSVP to central office. We'll make sure that you're well taken care of.
Did you say February 13th?
February 13th, yes.
Yeah, that's right. We talked about avoiding a quorum of board members, so we'll divvy you all up, so don't worry about it.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Reports. I'm going to have two questions on my own report. Actually, these are things that weren't at the committee, but two items that came up that I discovered after, when I came in to do the bills. One is that I don't know if we're thinking about next year's calendar yet for board meetings, but I know our first board meeting is the 6th, and I know 20th is a holiday. The only other days are 13th and 27th, and after coming in and talking to our accountants, the 13th is probably too early to have your second meeting in a month. And I also discussed it later with Mr. Mahmood. So if we're looking ahead, I think the second meeting in the month, for financial reasons, to close out the books for the previous month, has to be the 27th.
Okay.
So there's just a minor matter. I just wanted to give a heads up, because it would mean, just so the other board members understand, not only the 13th, it actually, would, board member to come to review the bills would mean bills would have to be done on the morning of the 10th. And that's really tough. They're usually doing it like 20th is more the, accepted. So it just pushes it too early. So I just wanted to lay out that. The other thing is, when I review the bills, I always look at the attorney's figures just to get an idea. We budget about $120,000 a year for attorney's fees. It could go over, but just to have an idea, they draw down from that budget amount, and we get a report on that. But occasionally I'll see, now, of course, this year we've had a lot of expenditure with negotiations, but sometimes I'll see, when the attorney gives us the bill, they typically will code the various expenses with like an initials of the, it may be a student initial, it could be employee initial, whatever the issue is about. They'll have the initials there. So this month I saw a lot adding up, thousands of dollars with one set of initials. So I said, can I have last month's too? Just to take a look. And there were a couple $1,000s more. It was nearing $7,000 on one issue. So I asked Mr. Mahmood, I said, how much expenditure should one issue sort of be before it's something that the board maybe could be notified about in some way? It's just an open-ended question. Is it $5,000, $7,500, $10,000? Seeing as how we only budget $120, if something would be, let's say, $12,000 on one issue, that would be 10% of our legal fees budget. That must be one heck of an issue. And typically, board members will, not typically, but mandatorily, whatever word that is, we don't get involved in student issues like that. A lot of these are probably special education issues. I don't even know an employee issue. Certainly, we don't get involved in. But when something reaches a certain level, so I would maybe ask Dr. Schiff's opinion, what he thought of that, or just wanted whatever.
I think you bring up a very good point, because these become complicated matters, especially when we talk about special education issues, if we are in due process hearings and other things, which really tends to accumulate the fees. The board should know, and certainly through the bills list, the board can get a sense of the types of expenditures that are going on. To just for point of information, but in terms of affecting litigation or getting involved in certain, in particular, special education matters that are handled with the child study team rather than at a policy level, I think can get complicated. We'd probably need to have further discussions and to see what is appropriate for a board's involvement in that, and how deeply you get other than just informative that this is what's happening.
Just as a follow-up, after discussing with Mr. Mahmood, I'm not sure, and Mr. Mahmood, you can either agree or disagree, that typically you don't track the individual attorneys, like how much is being charged for sort of each incident or each case. We don't do that. I mean, you would go back if someone asked you, certainly if Dr. Schiffer asked you, hey, how much have we been spending on this or something, you would go back. But we don't typically do that. The attorneys keep those figures, I guess. It would. But maybe, even if it doesn't come to the board, maybe it is somewhat useful
Then internally we can track
for administration
it.
to sort of know, you know, we're over $10,000 on this. Where are we going with this? This is-
I'm fully briefed on all the special education cases, so I'm aware of
Okay.
what's going on. But frankly, I don't track it in terms of what the attorney fees are per different issue. And that could be something we can gather the information on, absolutely.
All right, that's all
But
my
if,
questions
but
for
if there,
myself.
if there are areas where there is an overture or something that's out of norm, that at a minimum, at least, that could be communicated to the operations committee to say, we're running high on X, Y, or Z. You don't have to give the specific details or broach any confidentiality or process issues. But if there's something that's a little unusual, then to communicate that
Yeah,
within.
yeah. I
within
mean, certainly informationally, there's no issue at all. It only becomes an issue if there is intent to make changes or to try to divert attention to different places on it. That's where we have to be sensitive that there's already a process in place in order to do that. I think, though, if we're beginning to run short or if something is really atypical, then the board should very much be informed of it.
Mrs. Haley?
I'm just curious where we're running so far this year with the legal bills, what the total is versus what's budgeted.
I can answer it.
Because we're at 12,000 just for approving for this month, the attorney's fees. It's 12.
we were at, yeah.
12 grand.
So for the last 6 months, you would want to have $60,000 left, but we spent a lot the first 6 months with negotiations, so we have, instead of 60, we have like $38,000 approximately, as far as I've been able to, I think that's about right, about 38,000 left. So we normally would see 60, but that doesn't really mean anything because we maybe, you know, have spent that already. That might be all, hopefully done.
Maybe smooth.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
We can hope, cross my fingers.
Okay. Any other questions with regard to the committee reports? Mrs. Lay?
Yeah, I just wanted to explain the context of the question about air quality, because when I read the operations committee minutes, there were two different issues. So Mrs. Haas had talked about a bill for boilers, and boilers are perfect targets for ESIPs, because if we're using inefficient boilers, then where we can save money is in putting in efficient boilers, because our schools are so old and they keep failing. I know, having been on the operations committee. So when I saw that topic and then contrasting with solar roofing, well, I mean, I'd be the first person to be a proponent for solar roofing, but I think you have to prioritize. So I think that going forward, if the ESIP, what we get out of the ESIP can be put into like just the healthy environment and comfort level in the classrooms, and with that would be fresh air quality. I think those are things that we see year in and year out, and we think that you can't solve it. You think that we have to live with overheated classrooms or, you know, things like that. And I would love to see what we find from the ESIP project put into those kinds of projects first.
I agree.
Can you describe again the event that's going to happen on that's planned for February 13th?
Yes.
Okay, or Dr. Schiff,
Yeah.
either.
We have been getting contacts from around the region for districts to come in and see what we're doing. So rather than entertaining each district individually, we are modeling this after activities that Mr. Handler had attended in other districts, and how other districts that are looked at in the region or in the country as a center of excellence for one-to-one. This is how they do it. Basically, it's to invite multiple districts to your school district, and you split them up and allow them to observe instruction and have panel discussions with teachers and faculty members and administrators on how we are doing it, and they're trying to gather information because they're thinking of moving in this particular direction. Google continues their partnership with us. They're actually providing certain, they're going to provide some food, they're going to help out with the transportation, and also have an expert that's available to answer questions on the Google side of some of the things that we're doing. So we're very excited about inviting these districts in. It's quite flattering that we're getting so much attention from the work that we're doing, and we hope that this is one step in a larger step of developing our skills, sharing what we're doing, listening to what other districts are doing, and helping to understand their challenges so we can learn from them as they learn from us as well.
So it's an opportunity for our district to showcase the best-in-class work that's happening right here.
Absolutely.
Thanks. Okay. Any other questions or discussion with regard to the committee reports? Okay. I'll open up the floor to public input on the 2014-15 budget. Again, this is a standing agenda item as we solicit input as we formulate the budget over the next couple months. Okay, seeing none, I'd like to hand it over to Dr. Schiff with the action agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Kins. I ask for the board's consideration of the following motions under the area of education: to approve travel and related expenses, revised curriculum as reported out of education, to approve for first reading policy 5300, automated external defibrillators for first reading, approve the non-public technology initiative program purchases for fiscal year 2014, to approve the 2013-2014 goals for the superintendent, approve the HIB investigation list.
Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve items A1 through A6 of the action agenda.
On behalf of the Education Committee, I ask the full board to approve items A1 through A6.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I heard. Okay, any discussion? Mrs. Haley?
Can we separate A4? Only 'cause I
A4?
have a few questions, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, so we're going to vote on items A1, 2, and 3, and 5 and 6. Got that?
Yep.
Okay. Roll call, please, Mr. Mahmood.
Sure. Ms. Bogoshevsky?
Yes.
Ms. Santafonte?
Yes.
Mr. Gillette?
Yes.
Mrs. Haas?
Yes.
Mrs. Haley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lay?
Yes.
Mr. Pulsifer?
Yes.
Ms. Wasson?
Yes.
And Mr. Kins?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Motion passes. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve item A4 of the action agenda.
So moved.
No, I have a second.
Second.
I'm good. Yep.
Okay. Discussion? Mrs. Haley?
It's the assistant MA, but when you open up the memo, under all-day learning centers, the purchase item actually says 2 HP tablets at $259.98, but the total funded is only $300. So I'm a little confused. Do you mean that you're buying 2 at $259, or the total is $259?
We'll have
Sorry.
to check on that. I think the answer is neither. I think we get a certain amount of funding. The funding flows through the public school system
Right.
into the non-public, so we get a certain amount of monies that can be afforded for non-public technology initiatives, but they have to cost out how much it's going to be, so we will fund up to a particular amount. All of these have gone through our vetting process through central office and have been approved. However, the Board of Education of the local public school district must approve those funds.
And so these items are on top of the tuition that we're paying?
We may not know these.
No?
Please.
I'm just,
We may not even
This is
be
not
paying
special ed?
tuition to
Okay.
these schools. This
Got
is
it.
just non-public funds. We do the same under NCLB with Title I. There's a percentage of our allocation that has to go to non-publics.
Okay.
So that's where that comes in.
got it. I feel like this was like the first time I had seen this. I don't know why, but just trying to get clarification, so thank you.
All right, good. Any other questions? Okay, roll call, please, Mr. Mahmood. Again, this is for item A4.
Surely. Ms. Bogoshevsky?
Yes.
Ms. Santafonte?
Yes.
Mr. Gillette?
Yes.
Mrs. Haas?
I'll abstain.
Mrs. Haley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lay?
Yes.
Mr. Pulsifer?
Yes.
Ms. Wasson?
Yes.
Mr. Kins?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Motion passes. Continuing with the action agenda, Dr. Schiff.
Thank you. Mr. Mahmood or Mr. Whitlock, there's an item that we need to pull? It's B3. Okay, we're going to pull B3. I asked for the board's consideration of the following motions under Human Resources that I'm recommending for your consideration. To approve the revised leaves of absence, to approve the long-term substitute, to approve the leaves of absence, to pull B3, excuse me. B4, to approve the appointments of a teacher, long-term sub, lunch aide, transportation aide, co-curricular advisors, and coaches as listed, substitutes, student teachers. Again, we're pulling B3.
Okay, so I'd like to entertain a motion to approve items B1, B2, B4, and B5 of the action agenda.
On behalf of the Human Resources Committee, and to honor the incredible service of our fellow board member, Tuyen Lei, I move that the board approve items B1, 2, 4, and 5.
All right. Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please, Mr. Mahmood.
Ms. Bogoshevsky?
Yes.
Ms. Santafonte?
Yes.
Mr. Gillette?
Yes.
Mrs. Haas?
Yes.
Mrs. Haley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lay?
Yes.
Mr. Pulsifer?
Yes.
Ms. Wasson?
Yes.
And Mr. Kins?
Yes. Motion passes.
Motion passes.
Continuing on.
I ask for the board's consideration of the following motions under the area of operations: to accept the monthly bills list, line item transfers, joint transportation agreement with Montgomery Township, joint transportation agreement with, and continuing with another joint transportation agreement with Montgomery, to approve the revised policy for first reading as reported by Mr. Gillette out of operations, policy 7230, gifts, grants, and donations, and to approve the bylaw for second reading, bylaw 0155, board committees.
Okay. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve items C1 through C6 of the action agenda.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Sorry.
No, that's good, because I'm going to ask to separate C6.
Okay.
So I didn't want to move it because I'm going to separate one out.
All right. Can we also separate C5, please?
C5, C1 through C4. Okay. Okay, so we're going to have discussion for items C1 through C4. Okay, roll call, please, Mr. Mahmood.
Surely. Ms. Bogoshevsky?
Yes.
Ms. Santafonte?
Yes.
Mr. Gillette?
Yes.
Mrs. Haas?
Yes.
Mrs. Haley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lay?
Yes.
Mr. Pulsifer?
Yes.
Ms. Wasson?
Yes.
And Mr. Kins?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve item C5 of the action agenda.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Okay,
Dina?
discussion. Dr. Sasan.
So as I read this, I'm not sure if we had a policy similar to this or if this is a new policy, but three questions basically come to mind from three different portions of it. So the first one is the sentence that reads that we will not consider anything that would require matching funds, or that we will not match any funds, which I think is short-sighted. The second is with regard to the 5% over, that we would collect from organizations who are interested in donating to cover any overages. There's nothing there that says what would happen to that the remaining of the 5% if there is no overage. And then the third thing is, it talks about the disposition of things being that we will try our best to basically live up to the organization's wishes, but that we reserve the right to do what's best for our students, which of course we do. But I'm thinking specifically in the cases where HSAs have donated whole computer labs in the past, different board, different superintendent. There has been a decision made on the part of those individuals where they have taken computers because they are better computers than what we had at the high school level, and they have taken donations that the HSA made at the elementary school level and moved them, which really should not ever be the case, that if parents from a given school have worked hard to supply their students with something, even if it is better than as at another school where it could be used greater, that would ever be done. So I find these three things to be sort of difficult here. I understand this is for first reading, but I wanted to raise them so that we could sort of sort them out. Thank you.
Mr. Gillette?
Yeah, so I can sort of give you my views on a couple of those at least. So the overall view of this, I think, if we passed it as it is, I think it would somewhat discourage some donations. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because I think you have to be very careful if you're going to donate the computer lab. So our thinking was that the administration, the board, through us, are going to reserve the right to take the computer and do whatever we want with it. That's how it reads. I don't think that's a mistake. I mean, I don't think it's an error. I think that was how it was intended to read. Whether it's a mistake, whether it's right or good policy, I'm not sure. But I think that's how it was intended to read. And I think that will discourage some donation. That's for discussion. That's a policy.
I'll chime in for a couple of things. Yeah, no, I know, and I hear what you're saying. There, on the flip side, when a donation is provided to the school district, best intentions, but sometimes it doesn't work quite out. You know, the example that comes to mind right now is window-based air conditioners that were considerable amount of money that went into purchasing them, but without having the input or the direction of the board or the central office to say either A, it's not going to work because it consumes too much energy, or it's not the right specs or the right sizes. That could be a waste for even the people who are doing the donation. A part in here, I'm trying to think of hypotheticals. If there's something to help augment a curriculum, I would expect that the board or that the central office would say, we want that to align with the curriculum that we have to help augment it. So there may be choices in terms of either books that are provided or software that's provided. Or if there is, as for an example with the playground, where the original plan was to have X, Y, and Z. When they've got the plans and started implementing it, cost overruns, you can only do X and Y. So I think what they're tries to do is to make it easy for those who want to donate, also help relieve some of the burden on the administrative issues by having the district take over it. And I think that the intent should be that we want to match the intentions of the donors as best as possible, but there's going to be areas where it can't, and so it'd have to go to the discretion of the administration and the board. So if that could be, from a policy perspective, if that could be reworded to better reflect that, that would be an opportunity for the operations committee.
Can I follow up real quick before you don't mind? So I'm hearing what you say, Lorraine, and the two things. Well, I had an example first. Some HSAs several years ago now were very generous and provided the computer projectors for some of the schools. Ultimately, that led to a great inequity among our elementary schools and the board, which the board did not at all feel comfortable with. And we went on from there, but it was in like an untenable situation. We couldn't have some HSAs which were very generous and had the capacity to provide, and some which didn't have that capacity or chose to do something else. But I think ultimately where this policy could work with the things that it has going for it that are pretty good, are that I don't think we would ever in this policy get to that point where the whole computer lab, whatever, was stolen during the summer for somewhere else, because we would have more discussion now with administration before a donation like that was made. I think that was the intent. I think Judy agrees with that, right? I mean, that was the intent first, to never get in this situation So we know, so the HSAs know upfront, and we would have to say, hey, that's a great idea, but we might take that for some place else and then say, well, no, we don't want to do that then. Have that all up, have that discussion take place first.
Mr. Pulsifer?
Yeah, I just want to, add on to that. I mean, I think the reality is, and this is probably a little bit of a trite phrase, but I would hope that the board and the administration would do the right thing with the donation. But the reality is, from a policy perspective, we do, the situation necessitate that our policy cover the fact that sometimes there are donations that just don't quite work. And we still appreciate the donation, and we certainly don't want to discourage people donating, but there are times where we may have to take a donation and change the direction a little bit. And I think we wouldn't want to discourage, but I think hopefully we do the right thing and we don't take a computer lab and move it, to a totally different school with different aides and whatever else. But by the same token, from a policy perspective, we really have to have a policy that specifically states we aren't stuck with it, as it were, that we'll try to do the best we can and hopefully be able to 100% honor the donation. But there will be times when we can't, whether it's projectors creating an inequity or curriculum donation or a donation to augment the curriculum that doesn't fit our curriculum. I mean, there are times when, and hopefully again, if we have discussions before, but when we look at this as a policy question, I believe it necessitates that we have a policy that says we are not obligated to pursue that. Because I think what ends up happening after that point, if that's what the policy says, is we're obligated to return the donation. And I think we're all better served by finding a good solution when somebody wants to donate. And maybe, to Greg's point, fostering those discussions earlier in the process may keep us from getting to that point, but I think from a policy perspective, I think we still need to have it worded that way.
Okay. Dr. Sasan?
I have absolutely no problem with us having a policy, let me be clear. I think we absolutely have to be able to say no to things. But what I read here, with my history of fundraising for the district and for these schools, I would, if I was a parent group, I would in every way take this as, why waste my time fundraising? And we can't afford that. And to bring up the air conditioners, you have different leadership of different HSAs that go about things in different ways.
Yeah.
And absolutely, we have to encourage discussion before things get to that point. But I do think that there is far more here of discouragement than encouragement. And encouraging discussion, encouraging joint programming, and all of that is great. But to say that under no circumstances would we match funds, what if, the Duke Farms, which is not a possibility because it wasn't in her will, comes in and says we want to build a school, but you need to come up with $200,000 to our $20 million. Really? We're not going to consider that? This right now says we will never consider it. The 5% overage, we haven't addressed, but the other point about, all of those projectors that were provided by the HSAs were done so as a partnership with the district. We were asked to do it by principals. Now, whether, that it created inequities, I can understand, but really, are you going to turn down potentially, and obviously technology is something that Dr. Schiff has come in and really made a priority and done it in a holistic way, which is the right thing to do. But taking that portion of it away, that it was a technology initiative, I don't think you want to discourage that kind of investment in the schools when we have so many needs for public money. So I just am looking for a middle ground here, and I guess I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Lai?
This discussion reminded me that I don't know if the full board gets this information, but NJSBA recently offered to help revise policies. We work with Strauss-Esme, and over the past few years, I've sometimes wondered about the wording, and then someone would say to me, oh, that's recommended by Strauss-Esme, and then I just kept quiet. But one of the board members' most important functions is to help write policy and implement policy. So I think that what she's saying, should have more discussion at the board level and talk about improving the policy so that there's general more flexibility for us to accept appropriate donations.
Yeah.
And I do know that the NJSBA review contract would save us some money from what they showed in their presentation. So I think that it's something for us to consider too, because they said that their recommendations would be coming from all of the school districts. So it's their collective information from what we do as school boards across the state that would inform them to help advise us for our policies. And Strauss Esme, I'm a writer, and sometimes I didn't really like how they, presented things, honestly.
Okay, thank you. Just real quick, this is a revision to the current policy, which was approved in 1990, which was 3 paragraphs, and it looks like about 5 sentences. So I think the intent is to try to provide more direction, set expectations. Greg, as the committee chair, you've received additional feedback, and then also this is the first reading, and second reading doesn't have to occur at the next meeting, and nor do I recommend that it do so for this one. So I'd like to direct the feedback that you have to take it back to the next committee meeting. You can refine it and then bring it for second reading after the next operations committee meeting.
I think that'd be appropriate, and as you just mentioned, the first 3 paragraphs that are struck through were the policy from 1985 and 1990, and it says all the same things. The board reserves the right to use any gift in the best interest of the district. So it says all those things that might be somewhat objectionable as far as like moving, you buying a whole slew of microscopes for the middle school, and then we said in the summer to move them all to the high school, something like that might be objectionable. That could already happen in the current policy. So I don't think we've moved much from that, but I think we could definitely take this back. And as far as Mrs. Lay, your comments, board had a lot of input in this policy, especially I want to commend Mrs. Haas, who has a whole paragraph there that she suggested, right? In my copy, it's in, I think it's in red. Is that yours, Mrs. Haas? There you go. See, so we did have, this isn't from a Strauss Esme, is it? No. This is something that we came up with. All right.
Homegrown.
That's all I had to say. But yeah, we can take it back.
Yeah, it's homegrown.
But we're still going to vote on it?
We can vote. We can.
Vote to postpone.
We can. It's first reading, so we can. We can vote,
You
or
can pass it through if you think it has the framework for a good policy, I guess. That'd be my recommendation. Unless you completely object to it in any context, then vote no.
okay.
Or we could table the
Did
first
we
reading.
move and pass
Yeah, that's why I said you can vote yes.
Okay, well, we have a motion and a second to vote for first reading. So unless there's, I'm welcome to have the roll call, and we've got the direction for what the next steps are.
And we will go back with it regardless.
Yeah. Okay. Roll call, please, Mr. Mahmood.
Surely. Ms. Bogoshevsky?
Yes.
Ms. Santafonte?
Yes.
Mr. Gillette?
Yes.
Mrs. Haas?
Yes.
Mrs. Haley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lay?
No.
Mr. Pulsifer?
Yes.
Ms. Lasant?
No.
And Mr. Kins?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Motion
Still go
passes.
back.
I'd like to entertain a motion to approve item C6 of the action agenda.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay.
Good.
Jen Haley.
Thank you.
Discussion? Mr. Pulsifer.
Apparently, I jumped the gun this morning on printing and reviewing the agenda because I don't have a C6. Could we get just a quick summary? I think I saw on somebody else's here that it's the bylaw for second reading. It looks like the
It was for the
governance
committee. The committee.
Okay.
So there was first reading last meeting. When I noticed when I was checking that it wasn't on there, I asked for it to be put on. So it's on the official agenda that's on the
that's-
table.
See, I tried to go in early this morning and review it and make sure I was prepared and send all my comments to administration on everything I saw, and I didn't have a C6. So next time I'm waiting till about 5 o'clock.
There you go. Okay. Any other discussion? Mr. Gillette? Anything or no? Okay.
Nobody take offense, but I'm just not that enthusiastic about it. I'm going to vote no. But I know it's going to pass, but I just felt like I wanted to vote no.
All right. Any other discussion? Mrs. Lay?
I'm not gonna
You know,
convince anybody of
to be fair to you,
Yep.
I didn't get to read it either, so I think we would have uninformed votes because we didn't get to read.
Okay. I mean, it's identical to what was on the agenda last meeting for first reading, so I would have
Oh, no
expected.
change?
No changes.
No, it's just-
So
it's just
last meeting was first.
I was absent, or else I would have got my contrary
Contrary
vote out of
Mrs.
the
Lane.
way.
Print it early
Yep.
and show up.
I'm sorry, but
But I have it.
that,
I mean, I read it.
when I read it, there was more information than was needed, and we thought that it needed to go back for revision because to give it more flexibility.
Right.
And then, so that was first reading.
That was included in the first reading. So.
So then this
it's-
can't be different. I mean, this can't be the same.
It's the same as what was presented in the first reading, which was last week. So
Oh.
the first draft went around to the committees months ago. And in there was some, so in there it was really prescriptive about you can't have somebody who's, is the chair and that type of, basically it just gave it to the president's discretion, which is how it is currently for committee structure. The only requirement that is on there is that membership of the governance committee is represented by a member who serves on one of each of the three standing committees. I'm trying to think what other, so it was opened up that way. I mean,
Well, I think it would be valuable to hear what Mr. Gillette has to say about it. I think, really,
I'm just
please.
nostalgic for the 8 committees that we used to have. I don't necessarily think that I've been served better with this structure than before. And it's all about me right now because this is a board-related thing. It's about how the board functions.
Yeah.
And, 1/9 of that is me. So this is one of the things you vote on that more than a lot of the other things. It's about how you function as a board,
Right.
how you fit into it as a board. And I don't know that this experiment that we've been doing the last couple of years now is serving any better for the board. And I know some other board members, if they want to say so or not, have also expressed to me that they're not sure either that this, was any better. So I just, as a throwback to that, I was going to vote no on it. But I have no, changes to make to it. I have no
so again, the
suggestions.
goal of it's for the people who may not have been following, it's a revision to the committee policy from 3 standing committees, which is Education, Operations, and Human Resources, to add a governance committee. And the governance committee would be responsible for policy overall, in terms of incorporating feedback from each of the 3, and then also the strategic plan. So what I have found, and I'm the author of the changes way back when, was the 3 standing committees that we have aligns very well with the administrative functions of the district and serves the needs there. But what I found was that there was a gap, there was a lack of a forum in which you can talk about more higher level strategic issues or issues that cross multiple issues. So if you have a particular plan that you want to do, it spans all 3. So there's going to be a human resource impact, there's going to be a financial impact or an operations impact, there's going to be an educational impact. So it was an opportunity to do that. Also, there was an additional functionality to look at communication across board to the community, whereas in the current structure, it's delegated within specific things. So the Education Committee is responsible for communication of educational, curricular means of communication to the community and those types of things. So it was an opportunity to provide board members an opportunity to look at things kind of from the 10,000-foot view instead of being in the details for all of that. So You know, it was a long process. I think it originally went into the Operations Committee a number of months ago, and then each of the committees had response, reviewed it, provided input, and it went up for first reading last meeting, with the expectation that we would vote on it for second reading, so that when we do the reorganization, you could do it with the new committee structure, so that the incoming president could then have that all set. And it gives an opportunity for those members to say, okay, and I'm interested in X, Y, or Z, or W committees. So I'm trying to think. So do we have? We have a
motion and a second for
Okay.
C6. We're ready to take a vote?
Okay. So I'm going to Mr. Pulsifer.
I'd just like to add, you know, having served a while ago under the old committee structure, and then having the opportunity to operate on the new board with this new committee structure, I have found that the three-committee system has kept us much more closely aligned with the business at hand, because we're focused on that part of the administration that the committee aligns with. I certainly find that focus has also provided us much better information as committee members, and I think we were much better informed as a committee and able to present. You know, when I listen to us give our committee reports now, as compared to what we used to hear for committee reports, I'm hearing much more detail. There's a depth of understanding from the committee person, and what's being presented is, you know, we're getting better response from committees to the board and from the administration to the committee, so I like that. But I think we certainly found times where there was an issue that went across committees, and neither committee felt like they should take it and run with it or whatever, or some policy issues and things like that sort of don't fit anyone anyway. That was the piece that was missing to me for the three-committee system, and I think the governance committee really addresses what, to me, was the weakness of the three-committee system. So I think it's a good idea.
Okay, great. Dr. Sasan.
I don't have any prior experience with 8 committees, and I don't have any interest in being on multiple committees. I appreciate Greg's perspective, but I wanted to say that I absolutely see a need for a governance committee. I agree with Chris. There have been times where we've all been discussing the same things and separately, and we don't hear the discussion, and it comes here, and it's sort of muddled. So I think that would be useful. One other thing that I think would be actually quite useful, which, having only been through one budget process here, and I know I've had private communications with board members about this, is when it comes budget time, the Operations Committee is in charge of the budget, and the voting members of the Operations Committee are not voting members on any other committees, and I don't get the feeling, or I didn't last year, and I know we were very rushed, and I'm hopeful that the timeline will be different this year so that we could have more time as a board to discuss the budget. But, you know, having been on several other boards, you know, having a separate budget committee when it comes time that is not the makeup of just one committee, I think would be incredibly useful and represent an opportunity for each committee of the 3 standing committees to have one representative on it, to be able to say, these are our priorities as a committee, and feed that in somehow. So this doesn't address that, but I just wanted to throw that out there as a thought.
Okay. I'm going to throw something out.
So,
When we had a finance committee, the number one focus, 95% of it was the budget time of year and the budget, and there were, you know, 3 people on the committee plus the board president. Each of those 3 people also served on 2 other committees, so there were members of everybody on that. You know, you had perspectives from all the other committees that they served on. Of course, the board president got to sit on every committee if he wanted to. So we sort of had something like that. And you got me all whimsical for the old
The thought of sitting on 8 committees, 3 are quite a bit right now, so.
well, 3 plus 2 wouldn't be bad.
Right. Mrs. Haas.
I agree with Greg, and looking around the table, I'm not sure that too many board members are even familiar with the old system. But we used to have 8 committees, and everybody was on 3 different committees. They didn't all meet every month. They met when necessary, as Greg said. The Finance Committee took care of the budget and the audit and met appropriately for that. And we had a separate committee working on facilities, which is now all put together in operations. And likewise, HR, negotiations, 2 different committees. But honestly, we used to have a communications committee, and we used to have a policy committee, and now that has become a secondary or tertiary responsibility of the other 3 committees. And the other thing that Greg mentioned is that by being on various different committees with different people, I think we integrated the board better, because everybody had a chance to work with practically everybody else on the board. And now we're sort of, in 3 different pods, and, if you're not on the same committee, you never get to have those discussions with other members of the board. So I understand where Greg is coming from. And I think that Tom did a wonderful job trying to come up with a compromise on that issue that wouldn't bring us all the way back to our 8-committee structure, but to put, people together in another context where the things that were missing would be able to be discussed, and to give a little bit more attention to the overriding issues that tend to fall off the plate, as it were. So I'm willing to give it a try, and, nothing's set in stone, so if we go into it and nobody could figure out what committee they're supposed to be on, or, gee, how do we get 3 people on this committee? And, as it goes along, we'll provide feedback, and hopefully it'll be a successful proposal. But I do give Tom a lot of credit for going to the trouble of writing a policy and coming up with this idea, so I will support it.
Great. Thank you, Mrs. Haas. Any other discussion? Okay. Roll call, please, Mr. Mahmood.
Surely.
Ms. Bogoshevsky?
Yes.
Ms. Santafonte?
Yes.
Mr. Gillette?
No.
Mrs. Haas?
Yes?
Mrs. Haley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lay?
Yes.
Mr. Pulsifer?
Yes.
Ms. Swanson?
Yes.
And Mr. Kent?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Motion passes. Okay. That's it with the action agenda. And I'd like to open up the floor again to public comment towards the end of the meeting. Okay, seeing none. Okay, old business. Any old business from board members? Mrs. Haas.
I'll throw something out. Thinking back to my olden days as communication chair, I would like to suggest that we put a link on our website for budget input, since we haven't really gotten very much for next year, and somehow I don't think people are going to be coming out in the snow of January and February to provide us any. And that used to be another way that people used to communicate with the board. So even though we have email, it's always good to have a specific budget link to encourage people to provide input.
Okay, I heard a no problem from Dr. Schiff. Okay. I'd like to entertain a motion.
Can I?
Oh, Mr. Pulsifer.
I wanted to wait till the end. It seems appropriate that the last thing we talk about tonight be our departing board member. And I personally would like to thank Tuyen for her dedication, her passion, her outspokenness, her introspection, and most importantly, her dedication not just to this board and this district, but to this entire community. So thank you very much for your years of service.
I'll stand up.
Okay, and with that, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Do I have a second? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And abstentions. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you very much. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
You should be. You're a board member.
Really?
Two grievances on